was so nice one time.
Welcome and good morning to all of you. It's good to see you here today. Excuse me. I can't talk to you right now. We're in church and we're all turning off our electronic devices. Bye.
And your point is?
Now I got to remember how to turn the silly thing off. Here we go. No, we don't. I know. You know, you get a little flustered and you forget how to do the things that you do all the time. Good morning to all of you joining us here in the chapel and those of you on YouTube. We're especially glad to have those of you who may be here for the first time, and we hope to see you again soon. I'm Jean Wygant, your worship leader. Our speakers today are Reverend John Hasenjaeger, our musician, a longtime friend of East-Rose. Accompanying him are Marianne Barham, Alyssa Walker-Keller, and our own East-Rose member, Hugh Harris. Their topic today is sacred organizing. Now let's prepare our hearts and minds as we listen to the prelude. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, and to serve the spirit of human dignity, justice, equity, and compassion. As we begin our service today, let's take a moment to greet each other. First, we in the chapel, let's turn and look at the camera on the back wall under the clock and wave hello to our friends viewing the service on YouTube. And then greet each other in the chapel.
Hi, I'm Cynthia. Jay. Hi, I'm Brooke. Hi.
What a lively greeting. That was wonderful just to hear it all. A quick heads up for those of you attending online. If you would like to share a joy or concern later in the service, please write it in the chat so our staff can bring it up to be read at that time. As part of our annual canvas, each week a member will speak about what East Rose means to them. Today, we will hear from Eric Chewy.
How are you? So, what East Rose means to me. Patty and I arrived here at East Rose in 1991, a while ago, just a few years after a shrinking fellowship held a vote on whether or not to close. It actually happened here. Fortunately, that did not happen, and we found a home here at East Rose as it grew again. One of the first to befriend us were longtime stalwarts and fierce proponents of keeping East Rose open, Betty and Lee Gerald, who took us under their wing and even became surrogate grandparents to our kids, and music teacher also in Betty's case. And they also fostered two other parents, Debbie and George Keller DeCreta, who also became our lifelong friends, even if they left East Rose in distant Washington, D.C., and then across the river back to Washington. East Rose, in other words, is friends. East Rose is fellowship, as the name tells us. East Rose is a place where I can explore spiritual issues and think of things I hadn't taken time for before. East Rose, being a small church, is a place where I can develop leadership skills and was encouraged to, as in, we need another good board member like you. East Rose is as interesting and dynamic and meaningful as I am willing and able to help it be, as long as I actually get involved. After more than 30 years, East Rose is my home, and I'm glad you're here to share with me and be with me.
Thank you, Eric. As we begin our service, let's remember the first two, particularly the first two, of our Unitarian Universalist principles, as they will be the focus of what John and company will be talking about today. These principles are the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. These are easy words to say, but hard to live up to. Can I really believe in the worth and dignity of every person in the whole wide world? How about every person I encounter in my day-to-day life? If I say I believe in the principles of justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, how well do I apply that belief to my own relationships with others? Let's see what we can learn today that might help us act on these principles more faithfully. And our opening hymn today is De Colores. It's number 305 in the gray hymnal. The words will be on the screen. Most of us do not speak Spanish, but we'll try our best on the last verse and be reminded of the people who come here from other countries needing to learn English. To you who do speak Spanish, please sing out.
I'm going to try in my own feeble way to lead a little bit on this song. I have to comment, it's my nature, that I spent a number of years working with the farm worker movement, and the English words that are provided here in the UU hymnal remind us of images of people marching for justice in the streets, flags flapping in the wind, and things like that. And so here we are. I'm going to use the hymnal there. But one little thing about the way this is usually sung in the movement, and with Spanish-speaking folks from Mexico especially that sing this all the time, is that right at the end, there's a little musical interlude, it says in the hymnal, before you go into the next verse. And it sounds like this. Barbie knows it. She's going to play. She doesn't have to leave the music. And so, at least on the last verse, we're actually going to repeat the last phrase we sang, right? That little tune, right? And so she's going to start it up, but you all looking at the screen? Yes, there they are. Okay, she's going to play that little thing, and then we launch right into it.
What's the stand?
What's that?
Stand up?
Oh,
Yes,
would you like to
please
stand up? It would be nice if
So I'm going to play the interlude, and then we'll start.
we'll start in on all the colors.
John will now invite the children up for a story. And some back in there too.
Oh, I get to sit in the rocking chair? Yeah. Okay.
Oh, quiet.
Hi, guys. I'm John. Joe. You have name tags. Have names. All right. Let's see. Can you all hear me okay? I don't have a mic on me. Okay, so we're going to watch a little clip on the screen in just a moment, but I have a few questions first. Okay, one, who knows what we mean by Native American people? You know, have you heard that before? No? Not familiar? Okay. Well, they are sometimes called, there's another word. Since you don't know that one, I'll give you another one that's harder. The word is indigenous. Have you ever heard that word before? Okay. Well, up in Canada, you know where Canada is? It's that way. Right? Okay. And that's a different country, right? And they use the term First Peoples. Who was First Peoples to live here? Well, nice word for it that we use a lot, Native American. But in the fall, there's a day in October that they call Indigenous Americans Day. You ever heard that? Yeah, you have. Sometimes you get off from school, I don't know. But it's the people who first lived in this land, right? And the old word was Indians. You know what Indians means? Nodding, one person, okay. Well, we're going to see something, all right? It's going to be on the clip, on the screen, all right? So I want you to pay attention, and you'll see some kids dancing, right? And then they wear some special clothes, right? A little different from what you're wearing right now. And then one of the kids, a girl, is going to say something, right? And I want you to pay close attention to what she says, all right? So let's watch. Listen closely to what the girl is saying. Are we ready? Yes. Run it.
It's Indigenous Peoples Day. We saw dancing, bright colors, and so much pride on these tiny faces. There was also hope.
My hope is that all Indigenous women and children would have a home.
Right. You hear what she said?
Yeah.
Hoping what? That all, she said indigenous, right? We just learned that word. Right? What did she wish? All
Indigenous people have a home.
a home, right? How many people have a home? Ah, you would. Yes, okay. So anyway, what do you think about that? You think that's right? Oh,
Yes.
yes, right. We definitely would think that's right. But I have to tell you a little bit something about that girl, that particular girl, okay? She and her family, for a while, did not have a home. They were here in this area, they lived near us, down here, but they didn't have a home. So, have you heard people talk about homeless people or house? You know what that means? Okay. Well, sometimes the native people, did you recognize the clothes they were wearing? You see that sometimes? Yeah. Well, that's what Native American means. That's part of that culture, that people. But they have a home now, that family. All right. I don't want you to worry about that. But they were celebrating something that day with the start of making a little village using tiny homes. Have you ever seen tiny homes? Yeah? Yeah, sometimes people get together tiny homes because they don't have a regular home, right? And so the village of tiny homes is for indigenous or Native American people. And it's not very far from here, about 8 miles that way, right? In community called Walkers. And they're naming it after that girl's mother who died a few years ago. But they're naming it after her, and they're calling it Barbie's Village. Her name, the mother. Barbie. Yeah, her mother was Barbie. And yes, her father was named Ken. Okay. But now there will be this place called Barbie's Village, where Native peoples who get into difficulty and would be homeless, right, are going to be able to stay there. So that's what we're kind of celebrating today. I think it's pretty cool. So, that's a cool thing. All right, that's it for today. And we're going to sing a song. As we sing,
We're going to sing our children out, and if the people on the aisles would stand, hold hands to form a bridge.
We've done this before, right? Okay.
And the words of the song are up on the screen if you need them.
Okay. Now, you heard before the thing called a land acknowledgement, and I'm going to do that a little different way, maybe, this morning. But the Portland metro area, you know, rests on some traditional village sites of several indigenous peoples, and usually we hear a list of their names, right? Multnomah, Wasco, so on. But who made their homes along the Columbia River. Most of those tribes today are among the federated tribes of the Grand Ronde. But there's one, the Wasco, you see that on street names and so on, lived closer to here on the Columbia and up into the gorge. And the Multnomah Chinook were from here and westward. Lewis and Clark ran into them on Sauvie Island. I don't know if you knew that. But their name, Multnomah, is on what? This county, on a street around here. Used to be on what's now Providence Park. Well, the first time I went to it, it was Multnomah Stadium. Anybody remember that? The Portland metro area today is home to many Native American folks, though many of them are homeless here. We can say that we honor all indigenous people, but what does that mean to those who are homeless? Part of what we usually say is that we acknowledge the systemic practices of genocide and relocation and forced assimilation that still impact many indigenous or Native American families today. But today we're going to hear a little something specific about this project that does a little something about it.
Spirit of Life, 123 in the great hymnal, and the words are on the screen.
All
At East Rose, we support our church with our time, our talents, and our money. Each month, we share half of our offering with a community nonprofit that we support. This month, we're sharing with East County Rising, whose mission is to engage, energize, and elevate East Multnomah County by transforming governments to better reflect and represent East County's diverse and progressive community. Hugh, one of our speakers today, is the director of East County Rising, and he will be talking a little more about that later in the service. If you are attending online, you may donate by visiting our website and clicking the donate button, or you can scan the QR code on the screen. If you're here for the first time, we invite you to let the basket pass and truly be our guest. The gifts of the congregation will now be most gratefully received.
Good. Okay. Can't do it.
That was hard to sit still, wasn't it? Thank you both. We're going to do a responsive reading today. It's number 588 in the Gray Hymnal, "To Loose the Fetters of Injustice," and the words will be on the screen, I think. Yes, I will read the standard type, and you will read the italics. Is not this the fast I choose?
To loose the bonds of injustice, to undo the thongs of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke.
Is it not to share your bread with the hungry, and bring the homeless poor into your house, when you see them naked, to cover them, and not to hide yourself from your own kin?
Then shall your light break forth like the dawn, and your healing shall spring up quickly.
If you remove the yoke from among you, the pointing of the finger, the speaking of evil, if you offer your food to the hungry and satisfy the needs of the afflicted,
you shall be like a watered garden, like a spring whose waters never fail.
And now, John and company.
Oops, upside down. Better
this way. Okay, let me start with a question. What is a vocation or a calling for you? Now, maybe it just means work or a job you happen to have. Maybe it's something you love. Maybe you hate it. Or it can mean something more, a life's calling, part of your very identity, perhaps, what makes your life meaningful. And it may be that you think of someone doing the calling. Now, maybe it's God or a higher power, or maybe it's the community or a particular person calling you to it. Or maybe it's just life's circumstances, something you fall into. So, show of hands, how many of you have or have had in your life a vocation? Oh, really? I have to do in-depth interviews with all of you now just to check out whether that's okay. So, not to change the subject, but anyone watch the TV show Manifest? Oh, okay, a few. Only on this side of the room. That's a few people. Okay. And so I did watch it. It's now Netflix has picked up the season and released a new season. I'm sorry. Now, if you don't know the premise, I'm speaking to them now. I think if you don't know the premise, there's this airline flight that mysteriously disappears, and then 5 years later it lands. Okay, and then those who were on the plane a little bit later start having these visions that seem to reveal things. And the passengers start to call these visions, what? Callings. Somebody was paying attention, okay. All sorts of drama ensue, but I'm not going to give any spoilers, just in case you're tempted to watch it. But the main thing is, the callings are profound. They're life-changing. Now, your vocation may not be that dramatic, but then it might be. So, when I first went to seminary, it helped me to learn that there were 4 aspects to a call to be a minister. Okay? Now, I'm that type. I like to break things down. I say, oh, goody, 4 aspects. Now I'm really getting somewhere. Maybe you're not that type, but stay with me, though. Stay with me. I think these 4 aspects are still good and can work for any vocation, not just for ministers. So this is my take on it, and see if it works for you. There's the call that comes from your own identity, especially your own spiritual identity, your values. It may be a religion, or however you define it for yourself. This is a UU church, after all. Now, you may be called to be a Christian, there are some of us, or a Buddhist, or a humanist. Your call can come from that identity, right? And for it to be acceptable, the calling needs to fit your identity. And then, second, there's the inward secret call, as it's usually named, something within yourself, to your own vocation, which may be an inner urgency to be of service, or you just feel it, you own it. It's yours from within. Third, you recognize that you have the gifts for that work. You do an objective self-evaluation, I'm sure you do, and you decide you really do have what it takes to do that. And then finally, fourth, there's a call that comes from a community or a person or an organization around you that invites you and encourages you to do it, which may simply be they're saying, okay, you're hired, right? Or someone you respect says to you, I think you'd make a good whatever, right? Could be a minister, could be a counselor, an engineer, an artist, an organizer. What's that? We're going to find out. Your belief that you have what it takes is confirmed by other folks, right? They see it in you. And maybe it can even all be summed up by this famous saying by the writer Friedrich Buechner, who says, your vocation in life is where your greatest joy meets the world's greatest need. But enough about you, let's talk about me. At this point in my life, more than 12 years after retirement, I see my vocation, personally, as having had three main arenas. One, teaching in higher education, some of you know about, in philosophy and religious studies. I finished with 25 years right here at Mount Hood Community College. But then also in the church as a pastor to smaller congregations. But I was always, that's two, by the way, in case you were counting. Third, I don't know which way you do it. Third, I was always being drawn away from those arenas into various kinds of organizing. Community organizing, labor organizing, boycott organizing, political organizing. And now in retirement, just in the last year and a half that I've been involved with this group we're going to talk about, in my experience here, I've come to recognize this part of my lifelong vocation as sacred organizing. By the way, in case you noticed, no, they don't have it on the screen. That's actually the title of our talk, Sacred Organizing. So I'm going to turn it over at this point to Marianne Barham to present what Leaven means by sacred organizing.
Thanks, John. John, you can put up the first slide.
I'm going to hang out.
Okay.
I'm going to hang out nearby in case I need to interrupt you.
Well, yes. I'm sure you will. So, thanks, John. Well, I'm not as engaging a speaker as John is here, but I brought slides. So I'm going to introduce you to what this organization does and some of the things we've done across the area. Then Alyssa Keller here is the organizer for East Multnomah County, and she's going to speak directly to things that are happening in your area. So the Leaven Land and Housing, or Leaven Community, is a nonprofit that is housed in Northeast Portland. And within this nonprofit is the coalition called the Land and Housing Coalition, as well as a Lutheran church called Salt and Light, and a lot of other community programs, including a tool library, which is sometimes what most people think about when they think about Leaven. And founded, pardon? Tool, like shovels and rakes, those kind of tools. Founded 7 years ago, the Land and Housing Coalition is made up of more than 50 multi-faith communities in Multnomah, Clackamas, and Washington County that support efforts to build affordable housing on church properties, to advocate for humane policies around housing and homelessness, and to battle racial and economic injustice. Could I have the next slide, John? So we use a process called sacred organizing, which John's already mentioned, to frame the organizing we do and to guide communities in learning and practicing organizing strategies. And we're going to explore, and I'm sorry this slide is not maybe as legible as it could be, but we're going to explore each component of this spiral briefly. And every team that actually participates in our annual cohort, which starts in the fall and lasts for 9 months, every team in the cohort is taken through all the phases of this cycle. So the first part of this cycle is called Sacred Encounter. This is the practice of listening that connects us to each other and to the land. Relationships are key in this type of organizing. Everyone involved in the annual cohort is asked to have one-on-one interactions with other members of their team, with their faith communities, and with their larger communities and neighborhoods. This is a process which builds a commitment to the ongoing work we're doing and provides opportunities for sustainability, because we're always bringing people into this practice, teaching them skills, and giving them leadership opportunities. This part of the spiral is usually what happens in the fall. So we usually start the cohort late September through December. The next part of the process, and do you want, John has something to interrupt with now.
I did warn you. I was going to interrupt.
No, it's on my script, John, go.
Okay. So I just had to note that as having had organizing experience in the past, the sacred encounter phase was the hardest for me personally to accept, because every other time I'd gotten involved with organizing, it was always stepping into an ongoing campaign of some kind where everything needed to be done yesterday. And it felt like wasting precious time to just hang out with someone, trading life stories, getting in touch with what matters personally to both of us, sharing anxieties and hopes. But this was roughly the agenda for the fall. But I have to testify that I've been won over by this experience, by paying attention to this work of establishing relationships first.
Thanks, John. So the next, whoops, I think we need the slide again. Thank you. The next part of the spiral is called sacred unveiling. This is a practice where we see the world as it is and seek to understand where power lies. So we hold research meetings. We do power mapping. Recently, I participated in a research meeting where we met with Multnomah County Commissioner Chair Jessica Vega Peterson. So she is new to this role with the County Commission, and we were really curious. A group of us from Leaven, about 6 of us met with her. We were really curious about her agenda moving forward related to the housing crisis. We also do power mapping, and we're really interested in understanding who has fiscal authority and makes decisions in local institutions, including churches. These activities are all a part of the normal organizing process. I'm sure John has done a lot of this in his previous experiences with organizing. The next part of the sacred organizing cycle, and again, unveiling really happens in the winter, if you're thinking about this as a seasonal process. And now we're in spring, and now we're taking action. And I have a number of slides that relate to the actions that I participated in or other people in Leaven have participated in the last few months. So John, could I have the first slide? So this is a flyer that promoted the Barbie's Village event, and it happened last fall, so it's not a recent event. But it's really what I think motivated John to start coming out to UU congregations and talking about his experience with sacred organizing. And then the next slide, can I have the next slide? In late February, the coalition, in the middle of a snowstorm, or at the end of that really terrible snowstorm we had in February, the coalition convened members and allies from the Tri-County area in a mass assembly that was held in a downtown church. There was a lot of discussion about whether we should do it or not because people kept saying, oh, I can't even get out of my driveway, nobody's gonna come. But we held this assembly and it was attended by more than 400 people from the Tri-County area. The assembly was a massive show of solidarity that launched this year's campaign called Housing and Wholeness. And it was attended, and I am always challenged to pronounce her name. It was actually attended by Commissioner Yalapai, who is one of the county commissioners who is responsible for the housing initiatives that are happening. Then could I have the next slide? In late March, you probably all heard that the county commission in Clackamas County reversed a decision they had made to accept funding from Project Turnkey, which would have allowed them to purchase Quality Inn in the Sunnyside, or not in the Sunnyside, that's a neighborhood in my area, actually in Clackamas County, which they could have turned into traditional housing. So a large number of us from the coalition, not just people in Clackamas County, arrived to hear and it really wasn't about hearing what the commission had to say. There was probably 40 or 50 people, maybe I'm exaggerating, Alyssa was there via Zoom, who testified in protest of this reversal of this decision. A lot of people from the coalition, a lot of faith leaders in Clackamas County. Could I have the next slide? And then another thing we did, part of the coalition is a group of women in the Cully neighborhood, which is in Northeast Portland, who are organizing to support people who live in this mobile home park called El Rancho Mobile Home Park. They have received unjust notices of eviction. They have not had, the person owning the property has not met the expectations that a landlord is expected to meet, and they have been actively protesting. Well, on this day in the end of March, 60 to 70 people from the coalition came to their mobile home park in support of this protest and to show solidarity for the efforts there. And a number of people, we actually were able to find attorneys to meet with all the people who had received eviction notices. There were, I think, 16 people who had received eviction notices. So that's another activity that we have participated in. And then next slide, John. But I also realized that we're talking about building housing on our property. And so there are many, many projects that are happening which will hopefully build transitional and permanent affordable housing in the Tri-County area. And so I'm just going to mention a few and then talk about an experience I had yesterday. In Washington County, there's a very large housing project in development on Farmington Road. I was going to try to find out how many units were there. John and I were thinking maybe it was 100. There's also a Methodist church that is exploring what they can do with the property they own in Aloha. In the west side of Multnomah County, there are multiple faith communities considering options for how to address the housing crisis. Just yesterday morning, I joined members of St. Andrew's Episcopal Church in North Portland to canvass their neighborhood and talk to people and listen to their concerns about the possibility that the church, in partnership with a nonprofit called We Shine, might host a village of tiny homes on their property. And so our goal was to do deep canvassing and knock on people's doors and really listen to how they felt about the fact that there might be this micro-village in their neighborhood. Not to try to persuade them to think differently, but to really listen to their emotional responses. And then what I do know, and Alyssa will talk more about this, is that in Gresham itself, Covenant Presbyterian Church is looking at ways to develop the property they own here. And Alyssa will speak more about that. And so I know John has something to say here.
I think in the interest of time, we should cut right to that.
Well, I was going to have her speak at the end for the slides that I brought. Okay.
Okay. Well, all right. I did have something. Out of the lane. Okay. Let me just remind you of what I started to talk about, as if it were relevant. That I wanted to suggest that vocations apply not just to us as individuals, but also come to communities, like churches. And so we definitely want to invite you into this conversation to consider whether sacred organizing and engagement with Leaven or a fuller, robust engagement with East County Rising is a calling for you. So we want to encourage you.
We forgot the last phase of the cycle, John.
Did we, the sacred pause?
We skipped pause.
Do we want to make a pause now so we can do that? Okay. Yeah, there's the fourth phase, which I'm going to have Mary Ann get back the microphone.
We know that we're running, that there's concerns about how much we're talking. So, yeah. But let me talk briefly about sacred pause, and you don't need to put up another slide, but I need my notes.
Oh, what? Okay.
The last part of this thing, the process, really happens over the summer, and we know a lot of institutions, churches included, really slow down. We take time to have fun, go on vacations. And so this is a time for reflection and discernment and for celebration, and it does coincide with summer. And I have found this actual aspect of the spiral really helpful because in the 18 months I've been involved, I have learned so much about myself and other people, and it really gives me a chance to reground. And then there are also celebrations. About a year ago, a church in North Portland, St. Philip's the Deacon Episcopal Church, hosted a party when they found out they received funds to build 74 units of housing on their church property. And now we're going to invite you to be involved.
Okay,
John?
All right, yes. So how many aspects were there to the calling? Four. Okay. First, does it connect with your spiritual identity, your covenant, your UU principles, inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations? Do the values you embrace call you into this relationship? Second, do you find within yourself an urging towards this kind of connection, this way of service and compassion and justice? And do you believe that you have abilities, gifts, resources to make a contribution to this work? And four, do you feel these kinds of project in East County calling you into this relationship? So consider yourselves invited and even perhaps called. You want to say stuff about East County, right?
Yes. So I think we're going to have Alyssa and Hugh come up and talk a little bit. And there are a couple more slides that you can pull up, John, and Alyssa can come up, and she's the expert. Alyssa is the organizer for the Land and the Housing Coalition in East Multnomah County. So the slides are right behind you if you need to know why.
Thank you. That's helpful. Can you hear me? Hi, everyone. Thank you for making time for all of us today to be here with you. I'm new to this role as the lead organizer in East County. I am not new to East County. I grew up until I was 8 in the neighborhood of Covenant, actually, at 179th and Powell, and have worked out here with migrant families for the last almost 20 years. So this community is a very dear space to me. And I'm really excited to be part of the organizing work that we're doing, because as you're responsive reading, if you were to continue that reading just a little bit, it talks about if you do all the things that were listed in that you will become the repairer of broken walls and the restorer of streets with dwellings, which seems kind of like a perfect calling for a coalition that's building space and belonging and land and housing. So here in East County, we have 5 congregations that this year committed to being a part of the cohort. Gethsemane Lutheran, Covenant Presbyterian, Faith UMC, Lentz Tongan, and the Disciples Church that's on 179th. Its current name is Lynchwood, and they're in discernment. For them, discernment around whether it's time for them to change their name in order to meet the needs of their community, to be a place that can be safe for community members to come to. So each of these different congregations is working on different aspects of creating space and belonging. For Lynchwood, that's what their calling is to work on. For Gethsemane, they're working through using an ocean of parking that they have around their building and how they can make that accessible to the rest of the community during the week. And for Covenant Presbyterian, they have a plot of land behind them that Snowcap is going to be building a program, like a site at, essentially a satellite site to their office here, closer into Gleason and 181st or so. So really exciting work that's happening. They also have this little building called the Brown Chapel that they have been in discernment about for a long time and just don't know if they can actually do something to make it a community space on their land, or if it needs to be changed in order to make it a more welcoming space for all of the community members to come to. So they are in discernment about their next steps, which means that they have been going through this organizing cycle with us. And we've chosen them as our host site because they're pretty close to a process. They'll be breaking ground on the Snowcap work in the future. And they've been encountering pushback from neighbors because, as we all know, it can be really scary to have something new happen on the property that you were used to being like in a big open field. All of us have a little bit of that, like, not in my backyard in us. And all of us like need to process through that and also work through that and counter it, right? In order to be able to do something really fulfilling for the community. So we are in the process of hosting a series of workshops, and one of them is up here. At the Covenant site this Wednesday, we'll be having a potluck from 6 to 8:30. You all are so welcome to join us, and we'll be learning about kind of a 10,000-foot overview of what it is to counter NIMBYism and to like both work through it in ourselves and work through it with our neighbors through this process of conversations and one-to-ones that John was talking about. After that, we're going to have a canvassing day just like St. Andrews did that Mary Ann had. It'll be on May 6th, and we'll be out in the community knocking on doors. And again, we would love for you to come with us and help build community around this congregation, because just because this time it's Covenant that we're organizing around, our hope is that other congregations will get this opportunity in the next cycle. And then third, we're going to be having a Sacred Pause kickoff in June. So it'll be our day that we'll have kind of like a big celebration and what we're calling a horizon action, where we can see, oh, this is a space that's going to be welcoming and open to the community. We're going to have food here. We're going to have a party. It'll be a fun event. So the other thing I want to invite you all to, and I think it's the next slide actually, so many of our congregations are locked into this not knowing what to do next because it is so cost prohibitive to build on congregational land, right? Like you have to go through all these development studies, land surveys, figure out feasibility, impact to the neighborhood, and it can be so daunting that many congregations just never start trying to figure out what to do with their land or what they could even dream to do. There is a bill, House Bill 3482.
That's the next slide. Thank you.
Yes, House Bill 3482. And this bill is currently in House Ways and Means Committee, and it would provide pre-construction funding for faith communities, so it would cover some of those immediate costs, and it would also fund organizers to go out into those communities and have conversations with the neighbors, doing these countering NIMBYism workshops, doing this canvassing to build support ahead of time, because something we've learned from programs like that we've been running at Barbie's Village and other locations is that if you don't talk to the neighborhood before you start building, you will encounter a lot of pushback. So this is an opportunity, really, a great funding opportunity for us as faith communities to start assessing our land and figuring out what we can do to make it a welcoming space for our neighbors. And we'll be partnering with EMO, Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon, on May 10th for an advocacy day. You'd be so welcome to join us for that as well. So thank you all. I'm really excited to connect with East Rose, and I really hope that you can be part of our next cycle of organizing.
Good morning. It's nice to be back at East Rose. It's been a while. And, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Hugh Harris. I'm the Operations Director at East County Rising Community Projects and a co-founder of the organization. So what is East County Rising and why East County? So one of the things that we talk about often with East County Rising is why did we choose East County specifically? Why isn't it West County Rising? Why isn't it Clackamas Rising? Well, we live here, and I was born and raised here in Gresham. And my husband, now Gresham City Councilor Eddie Morales, spent a lot of time here as well during his childhood, even though he moved around quite a bit more than I did. And his sister lives here, nieces and nephews. My mother lives here. So we have a vested interest in the success of East County. And a few years ago, when we moved back from Washington, D.C. in 2016, it was the height of the 2016 presidential election. So there was a lot of vitriol in the election communications going out. There was a lot of terrible words about immigrant communities, about people who, were different. And Eddie and I being LGBT, him being Mexican, me being multiracial, we can be seen as different and othered as well as our families. We have family members that are undocumented. So the night that the 45th president, I don't like to say his name, won the election, we were with our family, and we had family members that immediately started crying, our nieces and nephews, because they were worried about their parents that were undocumented. And we made a commitment to them that we will stand up where we can, when we can, all the time for their family members and for them so that they would be safe. So we started calling the city of Gresham asking, will you commit to the same language that the state of Oregon uses, that we are not going to help ICE find people that are undocumented, right? And the city of Gresham at the time, unfortunately, turned us over to the police to talk about that, which is not really the message we were hoping for. So we started having meetings with community members, I should back up just a moment. Organizing happens all around us for so many different reasons, right? And that just happened to be one of the reasons why we started organizing here. My husband's been a community organizer since college, and I've been kind of on his tailcoats learning how to do it. But for us, we do a similar model. We may use different language, but we do relational organizing. So you build relationships with people. So when we moved back in 2016 and all this was happening, we started reconnecting to our community outside of just our family, but people like East Rose Church, people like the Latino Network, people like so many different organizations and people that are doing community organizing within their own communities. And after that 2016 election happened, we started hosting house parties and pulling people into our home saying, okay, what are we going to do about this? What can we do about this? And the first thing that came up was, well, the elected officials in East County are not really representative of the people that live here, especially in the city of Gresham. They've all come from one homogenous group of people, business owners, fairly well off compared to everyone else, mostly male and mostly white. And that's a valued perspective, but there's so many other perspectives, because when you're trying to solve the problems of a community, the people who are best set to solve those problems are the ones who are experiencing those issues. So they should also be at the table. So there's two arms of East County Rising. There's the PAC, which was formed first, and then there's East County Rising Community Projects, which is the nonprofit which works on issue organizing. The PAC works on candidate organizing. So on the PAC side, East County has supported about 60 races since 2018, and we've had about 50 wins, and that's from primaries to general elections, school board, on up to Congress, and everything in between here in East County. So we've changed the face of who is in our school boards, who's on our city councils. On the nonprofit side, which we started in 2019, we've worked on a number of issues so that we can hold the elected officials accountable. We bring the community along with us. We have relationship conversations with people. We ask, what matters to you? How can we work together to solve these problems? And then we testify, we canvass, we hold events. There's all these different ways that you can get the community involved. And one of the major wins that we had recently was in the city of Gresham. For 20 years, there's been a steady decline in funding for parks and recreation. We know that parks and recreation are good for our physical health, our mental health, our community health, the environment. People care more about the environment when they spend time outside. So we used our community organizing to get the city of Gresham for the first time to invest over $300,000 in a recreation program, which they hadn't had in decades, and to put an actual person in charge of parks and recreation, and to partner with other organizations like Play East, who's doing similar work in Wood Village, Troutdale, and Fairview. So organizing can make a difference. Here in Rockwood, there's over 70 languages spoken. There's 20% people living in poverty in the city of Gresham. There's almost 20% of youth living in the below the poverty line. There's 20% of people born in another country. So it is a very diverse place, the most diverse place in Oregon, and there's a lot of othering that happens, and we have to make sure that people are brought into this. So East County Rising goes out constantly and tries to bring people in and teach people how to use their voice, because we believe that people have the power within them. They just have to know how to use it. So that's East County Rising, and if there's anything that you would like to know more, please see me after. Thank you.
Thank you all. That was a lot to learn about, a lot to process. We're going to close with the hymn, Guide My Feet. It's number 348 in the hymnal. And again, the words will be on the screen.
Ready to stand?
Oh, yes, and let's please stand.
While I
as we extinguish our chalice and have our postlude.
I'm supposed to do something again. Well, so we combined this morning the benediction with the extinguishing of the chalice. Benediction is not a prayer, so you keep your heads up. It's a good speaking, benedictio, one human to another. So the first part is called a charge. This is where I tell you what to do in case you missed it in the sermon. Here's my charge to you. When you go out from this place, whether it's the physical space of this building or the cyber place of remote viewing, hi everybody, take whatever you gain from this hour, your sense of vocation or calling to what we are calling sacred organizing, take it into your life together and into the wider world, building relationships, making the world a better place for all. Now, the second part is called a blessing, a good wish for your life. And that's when we'll extinguish the chalice. Here's the blessing. As we extinguish the chalice, may the chances of life give you the opportunity to do all that stuff I just said in the charge. And in your own life, may you grow and blossom and flourish. May you excel at being and becoming the best version of yourself. Amen. Let it be so. And go in peace.
Barbara. This concludes today's service, but please stay seated for the following announcements. On Saturday, the 29th, which is this coming Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., there's a cleanup day here, the outdoors and indoors. Details will be in Petals, and Larry and Linda, will be coordinating that. Are there any announcements from the online? Don't think so. Okay, how about other announcements here? Keen, you have something.
Actually, it's just two things that have to do with community and whatnot. But we had a group here this last month that did a play presentation, and they did a wonderful job. And I'm just here to tell you that they're about ready to start their new play, which is called Jitters, which will be a much more lightweight, fun, humorous farce related to putting on a play. It's out at the Nuts and Bolts Theater in Boring. It will start on the 17th, and you can contact the Nuts and Bolts Theater or the Boring Grange or the Boring Theater, and they will be able to get you information about tickets and times and all that. The other thing, we have a play that we were thinking about bringing in, and we chose not to. They came in and they did some rehearsals here, which we donated space for the rehearsals. And it's called the Gin Game. And it's the Sandy Actors Theater, which is a group of community theater actors out in Sandy. And it is a dark play. It is not an upper. It will be done extremely well. The actors are very good. the play is quite well known. And as a result of them doing their rehearsals here, they have offered anybody in our congregation free tickets for any of the performances other than the opening night. The rest of it, all we need to do is call them and they will be glad to give us tickets. Get in touch with me if you're interested and I will pass that on, or I will facilitate.
In the pedals?
Let's put it that way.
Will you put it in the pedals?
We can put that in the pedals. I'll have to get the information clarified. But just so you know what's going on, I think it may start as early as May 3rd and will run for 3 weeks, and it's a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday afternoon. Friday, Saturday evening, Sunday afternoon. And it's, again, I think it's going to be a very good play. It's just not the offer that I would like to bring in, and it's not related directly to our mission and approach to life. So that's, you can talk to me if you have more information. Thank you.
And one other, oh, yes, Jan.
We're having a hike on Wednesday morning, and all are invited. We'll be meeting here at the parking lot at 9 o'clock to carpool, and going up to Camas to Clackamas Lake Park and hiking the Clackamas Creek Trail and around one of the smaller lakes. So let me know if you're interested.
Thank you, Jan. Are there any other announcements? Okay, I have one that we have coffee today because some people who came in today noticed nobody had signed up, and so they made coffee. There are sign-up sheets on the bulletin boards right out there on the side for coffee, for bringing flowers, for doing cleanup after, and I really would encourage you to sign up for that. We have more people here than we've had in some Sundays. So when you get your coffee, step away from the coffee machine so the other people can get to them. All right. Now you're invited to stay for coffee and conversation. If you're online, we invite you to exit YouTube and join Cafe Conversations on Zoom with the link provided.